You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser. You gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger.
Good evening, all. Welcome to part 2 of our virtual book study from the South Orange and Maplewood School District on The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. This is the second offering of this virtual book study coordinated by our superintendent, Superintendent Mr. Jason Bing. Today we are joined by Dr. Kevin Gilbert, our Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
And now I'll turn it over to our superintendent, Mr. Bing. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Much appreciated. Hey, Vanessa, I'll just turn it over to you for a minute, just to tell folks who you are, where you're from, and how lucky we are to have you tonight.
Sure. I don't know about the lucky part, but I will introduce myself. My name is Vanessa LeBou. I am I'm a professor and chair of the psychology department at Rutgers University in Newark. I specialize in infant and child development and have some expertise in the area of screen use. So I'm also, I live in Maplewood and I have 2 kids at Tuscan.
Very awesome. We're happy to have you join us today. So in just a moment, Mr. Bing is going to add our screen that we're using today back up for those who have joined virtually using a screen or a mobile application. You should be able to see this. Those that have joined through phone or teleconference, we'll try to narrate as we go as best as possible.
Shai, can you see the screen?
I can see it. Looks great.
All right, so let's get into it now. Last meeting, we really discussed part 1 and part 2 of Anxious Generation, chapters 1 through 4 or 5. We're now going to really look at part 3, entitled The Great Rewiring, chapters 5 through 8. Some heavy reading during those chapters, especially if you, as we all know, if you have children, especially if you have young ladies and girls, it was definitely some heavy reading. As noted last time, personally, I have will be a 12-year-old in about 2 weeks, currently grade 6. So this book resonated with me significantly. I really pictured my daughter quite often as I was going through the chapters in here. So let's get into it. So chapter 5, we're talking about the 4 basic harms: sleep deprivation, social deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Just real quick before we start, I do want to mention we have a Q&A that Ashaya is facilitating, and we had great comments, great questions last meeting. So please feel free to utilize that feature as we move forward. We want you as much a part of this as possible. So 4 basic harms identified by the author: again, sleep deprivation, social deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. So when we're thinking about or reflecting on our own children's use of smartphones, what have you observed the impact of over usage to be? So we'll give you a minute to think about that. And then if you could put your responses and or questions in our chat, our question and answer, that would be wonderful. Hey, Shai, I just got a quick email. Could you just let folks know how to put in a response or question and answer?
Absolutely. If you're on a mobile device, it should be 3 dots at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that says Q&A, and it should be next to apps and captions and highlights. And if you're on a mobile screen or a desktop screen using WebEx or our browser-based version, you can toss the Q&A in the bottom right portion next to where the panelist images are. This is a really great one that was just added. Affects sleep. Students have trouble initiating sleep after prolonged use of their cell phones.
I was just going to comment on that, just observing my own daughter. Um, that's one of the biggest things I've noted is trouble sleeping. Um, most experts recommend, and again, depending on the age of your daughter or son, I have a almost 12-year-old, as I noted. So I have a 9 p.m. cutoff for usage of her phone. Um, Vanessa, you might have some suggestions as well.
Yeah, I would say there is actually a lot of research looking at the blue light, like the light that comes from the phone, and there is actual empirical data showing that it disrupts sleep. So it's a really good rule to not, like, at least for 30 minutes to an hour, not have them look at like a tablet. My kids don't have they don't have smartphones yet, but they do have tablets, and it's very similar. It's hard to sleep and they get really irritable after they've used it for a long time. I would like really recommend not using it right before bed.
I got a double doozy. My daughter has the TV on and her phone.
Yeah,
It's it's
yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's becoming more and more common. We had to make a rule in our house that there's no like double device duty. And you know what? The worst culprits are my husband and I.
Yep,
So we've had to sort of try to lead by example, like if we're watching TV, put the phone down.
we discussed that last time in regards to parents really being that example and model, especially if you have younger kids. Um, I started using the timer on my daughter's TV, so it automatically just shuts off. Um, and I'm now exploring various apps to get a little more control over her phone. I have I have some control using T-Mobile, but I had a couple of my friends who actually have utilized better apps, and we'll share those with folks that I'm looking to download. Go ahead, Shia. Sorry.
The next one that we have is signs of a little bit of an addiction where they're lacking socialization in the real world, along with that lack of sleep.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get to one of those slides as we go on, but there was a sense of community. I don't want to say when I was growing up, but when we were young and smartphones were not in existence. And again, as we noted at our last book study, this is a smartphone issue. It's not a cell phone issue. It's a smartphone issue. Um, Having our children have mini computers in their hands and access to anything and everything is very different than a cell phone. So our discussion is really centered on smartphones and the impact they're having on our students. And addiction is one of those.
Oh. The next one comes from a staff member. Many of our students are sometimes letting their teachers know that they're having trouble pulling away from video games and endlessly scrolling at the end of the night, and it's affecting their next day inside the classroom.
Uh, let's if we put children aside and just look at ourselves as adults, there's addiction there. How many of us feel anxiety when we don't have our smartphone around? When we're not checking our smartphone, and our often our excuse as adults is it's work. You know, it's still addiction. We talk about this quite often. If you're getting a feeling of anxiety when your phone is 20 feet away, that's an issue. Or you don't have your phone for an hour, that's an issue, and that's work we have to do as adults. Um, and we have the opportunity, obviously, because we discussed brain development at our last meeting. We have our opportunity with our children to really change uh, from a neurological standpoint the wiring of their brains by really doing simple things.
Also, if you're interested, so the addiction issue with screens is it's not just smartphones, it's video games, other kinds of screen type behavior. There's another book called Irresistible: The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. If you're really interested in that, it just explores the idea of addiction with phone use, internet use, video game playing, and sort of the symptoms of addiction. But like one of the things that I notice a lot is the irritability that happens when they're done, and that is certainly a symptom of addiction, the sort of withdrawal that happens.
Yep.
I think our next one ties directly into that. When this parent takes their iPad away from their 9-year-old, he seems to transform into a possessive glum type character, clawing for it back. And I think that's a perfect way to describe what it feels like that they're going through that withdrawal from the screens that they're so used to.
Yeah, we've been doing phone-free Sundays in our home, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle. My daughter's so used to getting up and checking the phone. That's the first thing that she does. Yeah, it's addiction. I think is a perfect word.
One thing I'll say about to Nicole, who said the thing about the iPad and the 9-year-old, I don't know what you can do with the iPad, but I know for my two kids, they have tablets. One of them's 10, so the same age as your child, and it's like after I think they get 2 hours a day, and then it just shuts off. So I think there are settings that I don't know with the iPad. I look, because they have a tablet that I can control sort of how much time they're spending on it. But I do believe there are ways to sort of limit. Theirs just turns off and they can't use it until the next day after
Yeah.
2 hours.
You have to take a trip to the Apple store. I tell everybody
Yeah.
that there's things on your Apple phone that you can control that will make a huge difference. I just made my first trip there a month ago after a friend recommended it, and it made a huge difference with my daughter's usage of her phone and the controls that I had. Big difference, big difference. So if you take a look, we really wanted to look at the data this time around, and we talk about social isolation. So one of the four harms of overusage of smartphones. And you look on the left-hand side, and you will see, 0 to 160 in regards to minutes per day spending with friends, and just a significant decline, especially in ages 15 through 24, in regards to the face-to-face time they're spending with friends. If you continue this graph out, it actually, unfortunately, even goes lower, which is very scary. And we talk about, and we have a teacher online, we talk about the impact in the classroom in regards to interpersonal skills, and really being able to socialize with others. This is having a huge impact on that. And those social interactions, especially at young ages, are when kids are learning to problem solve, are when kids are learning empathy. And those opportunities are being slowly taken away.
And from my reading of this book, if my reading of the literature on this topic, this is the real problem with phones. So the medium isn't actually the problem. So like we said, we're talking about smartphones. So it's not the actual phone, it's not a tablet, it's not a television screen that is actually the problem. It's what the phone is taking the place of. And as you can see from this graph, it's taking the place of time that kids are playing. So it's not just spending time with friends that has declined, just playtime has declined. It has declined across the US in schools, it's declined everywhere. So the problem is they're doing this instead of playing. So if they were still playing as much as they always were, I think these phones wouldn't be as big of an issue as they are. But this is the real problem, right? It's the fact that phones are taking the place of the social interactions that they really need in order to learn empathy, learn turn taking, learn how to solve problems, learn how to solve social problems on their own. These are all really, really important things for kids to do. It's also taking the place, parents, and John talks about this a little bit in the book. I wish he talked about it a little bit more, because I actually think the cause of anxiety is the fact that they're not, it's not just that they're not hanging out with their friends, they're not taking risks in a safe environment anymore, right? So they're not riding their bikes in the street. They're not walking to 7-Eleven on their own like many of us did when we were kids, because they're not interacting socially. So they're not sort of learning um, to take really minor risks in a safe environment, which helps cause the anxiety that they are feeling, right? So you have to learn to take risks and to sort of move your boundaries a little bit in order to gain confidence, in order to learn how to solve problems on your own, in order to not feel anxious when something new comes along the way, because you've had the opportunity to take some risks in situations where it's not terribly dangerous. This is something that kids do in social situations, and it's especially important for teenagers, right? So this is a time where they actually do behave in very risky ways compared to other times in their development, in compared to adulthood. And if they're not learning to do this safely, by doing things like riding their bikes, by going downtown and going to Starbucks with their friends. I think this is the real root of a lot of the anxiety that they're feeling. So, by replacing this with social media, with cell phones, it's just exacerbating the issue that the not hanging out with friends is creating.
It also, the face-to-face interaction also allows children to explore emotions, in real time. And as a, former elementary teacher, and we have some teachers on board tonight, they could tell you in a second. Often you see the impact in the classroom. Uh, Ask a child to write. One of the most responses you get, most common responses, well, I don't know what to write about. Which, and I'm as a writer myself, you can't write without emotion. Without being able to identify an emotion, you can't write. Without being able to identify a voice, you can't write. And a voice comes from being able to understand emotions and having gone through emotions. And it's very difficult to do that when you're taking that experience, that face-to-face interaction experience, away from kids. We also talk about one of the harms being sleep deprivation, which, as I noted, I'm seeing with my sixth grader. But as you can see with the graph, significant increase in the amount of sleep students are getting as as we go into this 21st century. And every bit of research is showing the importance of sleep. Um, and if you have older students, such as juniors or seniors, I'm going to dare put out there that they're not even getting close to 7 hours. You're looking at 4 to 5 at the most, quite often, which is pretty difficult if you think about, and I'm going to use 12th graders because it's on the screen. If you think about a 12th grader's day, right? So I go into high school and I have anywhere from 7 to 8 different bosses with 7 to 8 different rules and 7 to 8 different expectations, 7 to 8 different tasks. It's mind-boggling when you think about it. And doing that on 4 hours to 5 hours of sleep, no matter how vibrant an adolescent you are, is so very difficult. I cringe just thinking about only getting 4 hours of sleep. And I'm 25. Shy, get that smile off your face. So you see we see, as an educator, we see the impact. And I know Vanessa mentioned irritability. I mean, that's just, you want a root cause. And then we also mentioned addiction, right? And how many of these companies, social media companies, are leveraging the idea of addiction, right? The idea of novelty, of finding something new on Instagram or TikTok and being able to move right through it real quick, getting something new, getting something new, getting something new. Yeah, especially for children whose brains are developing. You know, we're adults and we're having trouble navigating social media. Think about it from a child's perspective whose brain is not fully developed, especially the frontal cortex.
Did you guys talk about the brain in teens last time?
We
Did I
didn't get
miss that?
into it. We did not. That's why I kind of wanted to have you on today.
Oh, well, I mean, one of the things that is true about adolescents and why they're so prone to taking risks, for example, that they usually wouldn't take, is that the part of the brain, and you know, you have reward on here, and that's the key word. The part of the brain that can anticipate and process rewards is fully intact for teenagers, but the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, like you said, that is responsible for like planning ahead, you know, anticipating consequences, is not fully developed until well into the 20s. So what you have is a fully mature body that can feel every emotion quite intensely and that can anticipate rewards, which is exactly what social media gives them. Just what Jason was saying, just fast rewards. They can fully anticipate the reward that they're going to get from these behaviors, but they're not so good at planning and thinking about what the consequences are. And this is worse when peers are present. So, you know, when peers are there, they're going to act even riskier. And that's what you get with social media. You know, these risky behaviors are going to seem super, super rewarding, but thinking through the consequences and planning these actions and what's going to happen tomorrow, they're not so good at that. So that's one thing to really remember. And this is why we think of adolescence as this tumultuous time, because their emotions, and why we feel, if we have a teenager at home, that emotions are running wild, because they are. They're, you know, their hormones are changing. They have this ability to feel all of these emotions, but not to regulate them, not to sort of keep them in check, and not to sort of say, well, yeah, there's going to be this social reward from doing this risky thing, but there's also going to be these consequences that I should think through. They're not going to do that second step. And, you know, this is not giving them a pass, right? I'm not saying that this is an excuse for bad behavior or for, you know, really, really risky behavior like drinking or drinking and driving, but this helps explain why this is so attractive to them, right? The rewarding aspects of the features of social media like Instagram, and TikTok and YouTube, like it's just very, very rewarding without the sort of mature prefrontal cortex that can think through all of the consequences of their actions.
So let me share, as Vanessa noted, some data with everybody here. One of the reasons why we're moving towards a true freshman academy as a school district in 25, 26 is due to some pretty frightening data. You know, we took a look, and it's not just CHS. It's really it's every high school and freshmen especially. So if you take a look at our data and really look at this, let's just look at discipline. Out of the round estimated 900 discipline events, 400 and around 80 were freshmen. 480 at around 900 or so were freshmen. I want you to think about that number. right? Half of the discipline issues at Columbia High School were freshmen, were our youngest children. The next closest was 200 away, the next grade level, 200 away. If you look at our HIBs, our bullying, out of the 73 events so far, 39 were freshmen. And I can go on. If you're looking at substance abuse, over half are our youngest kids at the high school. If you're looking at fights, over half are the youngest kids in our high school. If you're looking at our numbers of our students at Columbia High School that were hospitalized for mental health, over half were our freshmen, our youngest children. So when we talk about this being an epidemic, it's an epidemic. When we talk about the impact on school, it's an impact. If we're looking at kids failing one or more classes, I'll let you take a guess at what level has the most. It's freshmen, by far, by far. And again, when you talk to our teachers, it really comes down to attention fragmentation. It comes down to kids coming into school tired often. So we're going to open up the chat real quick in Q&A. I really want you to think about your own child or children, and where you're seeing the impact of overusage most. Are you seeing it in school? Are you seeing it in athletics? Are you seeing it in CCD? Are you seeing it in church, in temple? Where are you seeing it most often? When you think about your own child or children, where are you seeing this manifesting? For us, as I just noted, we're really seeing it amongst our freshmen. We'll give you about a minute to either put in some responses or give us some questions about that.
While they're typing questions, I mean, I have a question. So you see that so it's really interesting that it's with freshmen. Do you see that improving in our high school? I mean, my kids are 10 and 7, so I'm not there yet. But the implication is that do they improve over the course of being at Columbia High School?
I think what we're seeing, because we're lucky enough to have Team Unscreen in the district, and really lucky enough to have access to data. I think you're seeing most of our children, mine, for example, are getting these smartphones somewhere after 5th grade, middle school. My daughter got hers in 6th. I know some parents are holding off, and I think they should, till after 8th. I think you're seeing students that are, going a year or a year and a half into having a smartphone. These freshmen, 2 years of having that instrument, and you're seeing the impact of it and the data around it. I also think there's a maturity that goes along with it as well. As the students get older, I think they hear the adults a little more, and they're hearing, as you noted, a lot of the data around smartphone usage. And I think they're also seeing it as a tool as well as they get older. Our kids are seeing it as a tool to submit homework, to develop, to be creative and analyze things. As they get older, they're seeing that. But we're still seeing issues at the older level. I think at the freshman level, they just don't have the brain to handle it, and they're being put into this very large ecosystem, twice the size of where they're coming from, and it's scary. We talk about often trying to shrink the footprint and create small learning communities over in Columbia High School. We're trying to do that work, and Freshman Academy is the first launch of that. We're going to slowly start going into academies as well, where we're really creating small learning communities so kids don't feel as overwhelmed and don't rely on that smartphone, because we know for a fact I can sit at the entrance of a building and watch these freshmen come in. And when they see the size of the building, the amount of students, they go right to that smartphone for safety, and to calm themselves down. So yeah, the data is very interesting as we keep looking at it. Go ahead, Ashaya. Sorry.
So the first response and remark that was submitted, I think, is a really good one, especially on this topic of where they're seeing the effects and symptoms of this, and really it's impulse control in the classroom. Our adoptive son was given a smartphone for gaming and other uses at age 4 in his bio home. He is addicted to gaming and screens. He also has ADHD, and if he has been on screen time a lot, even at school, it affects his behavior negatively, and his impulse control is much worse. He does not have a phone, and we limit screen time at home, but we're concerned with how much he is on a screen in the classroom because it's hard for him to not go off and play games instead of staying on his classwork.
This is work we're actually doing with Team Unscreen. We're really trying to get a balance in our classroom, starting with our kindergarten students in regards to whether it's Chromebook screen time or a smartphone screen time. We're currently developing some protocol around that. We've been working with our teachers who also have been saying that we need to get a better balance amongst screen time in the classroom. So that is something we're working on. Go ahead, Vanessa. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask because I don't know a lot about this new the freshman program, but one of the reasons I think you might be right that one of the reasons they might be going to the screen is like it's sort of this attachment thing, right? Like think about little kids when they feel nervous in a new place, they cling to mom. I mean, maybe there's a way to especially with this new program you're talking about, to place them with some people that they know so that they can cling to people instead of the phone. So it's just like any of us, when we walk into a party, we don't know anyone there. We see that one person we know and we cling to them. And, if that person isn't there, then yeah, we're going to look at our phones. So if they had like a buddy or something like that, right, coming in, they might be more tempted to cling to a person than a phone.
And we noted this at the last book study. We are moving towards phone-free K-8. And right now we're looking at that freshman academy as also an opportunity to significantly limit smartphones. So whether that's using storage devices or just banning them completely, we're now exploring that as well. So yeah, I agree. We've got different strategies that we're utilizing in this freshman academy to try to get kids to feel a lot more comfortable and safe. As you know, Vanessa, if they're not feeling safe, nothing else happens. We know that the brain just will shut down. Go ahead, Ashaya.
Thank you. The next one's really great. Mentorships work well. Maybe setting up a mentorship program with upperclassmen with our incoming freshmen. The biggest issue seems to be having students focus on our in-person interactions within our classes. With the advent of AI, many students simply resort to using artificial intelligence to just get the work done. Then they're scrolling on TikTok or playing games.
Very true. By the way, Vanessa, just a real quick point. That is so true. Walking into a party or walking into an event, that applies to everybody but Ashaya. Am I right, Dr. Gilbert? Whenever Ashaya walks into a room, everybody knows him.
Absolutely correct, sir.
Yep, it's unbelievable. So the book, as you know, also transitions to the impact these smartphones are having on different genders, especially our girls, which obviously is significant to myself, having a sixth grader. So one of the big questions is, what does social media have? Why does social media have a greater magnetic pull on our girls than our boys. And if you look at data, it's really showing that girls are drawn to social media because it seems to offer ways to fulfill their strong desire for, and we talked about this earlier, for connection and belonging, that sense of communion. Uh, but that also often leads to harmful experiences, such as, and I see it with my daughter, social comparison, relational aggression, and really unrealistic beauty standards. If I have to drive in a car with my daughter in the passenger seat one more time with her taking a selfie of herself, my head will explode. So that idea of social comparison, I think can be really harmful, especially for our females. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I was going to say that social media in this way. So I think personally that, social media, what it does is exacerbates issues that are already there, right? And all of these issues with girls, with social comparison, with relational aggression, with unrealistic beauty standards, these are all societal issues that is socialized in girls over time. So what social media does, it just makes it worse. It exacerbates it. It makes it just more visible, more on the nose, right? So the thing to remember is that all of the things that existed before with boys and girls and issues that they go through, especially in adolescence, is just now like magnified, I think, by 10 because social media is there. Boys are less prone to all of these things. So they're more prone to physical aggression, whereas girls are more prone to relational aggression. Girls are more prone to social comparison, the beauty stand, all of these things are just going to, social media just makes it worse. So social media, the point really is that social media isn't creating these issues. Social media is going to exacerbate them. And this has to do with the kid's personality too. So if you have the type of child, if you are, a Shia and you're really outgoing and everybody knows you and everybody likes you and you're using social media to sort of widen your social circle and to communicate with your friends even more than you do in person, then it's probably not going to be super harmful. But if you have issues with self-esteem, if you have social anxiety, if you already have issues with anxiety and depression, social media is going to make it worse because all of those things that you're prone to doing in person, it's going to be so much easier to go down the rabbit hole on a screen.
Yeah.
What's
Is it-
also interesting, if you really look through our discipline reports, you're seeing a significant increase in physical aggression amongst girls, and you're talking about amplifying that really all stem, and I'm using the word all stem from social media.
Vanessa, you keep having really great ideas. There was a comment on a middle school mixer that you mentioned. It's a great idea to do exactly that. If the mixer was during the school day and facilitated by teachers as a mini retreat of sorts with smaller groups doing activities, getting to know each other, it would make those first few days of high school a lot easier. They will recognize each other and can say, hey, we did those icebreakers together last year.
I think that's a great idea. I think the idea also of having like an older mentor is a great idea. Any place where you can make kids comfortable with other kids so they're not retreating to the cell phone is a step in the right direction. So I mean, I think that's a great idea. The mixer's a great idea. The like junior senior buddy's a great idea. These are great.
Right. And as we discussed earlier, and as you see this graph, um, the 20 hours or plus is staggering. But if you think about what it's replacing, that's the thing that really shakes you to the core. What is the 20 hours replacing that they could be doing, really should be doing?
And that's the part that scares me the most. It isn't the screen. Again, I don't think the problem is the screens itself. I think it's what's behind this graph. What is all of that stuff that used to be high and now is low that kids aren't doing anymore because they're spending time on their phones. That's the part for me that is really the crux of the issue, is finding other ways where they can engage with people, other kids their age. And I know it's tough. I'm a working parent. I grew up in a household where my parents worked, so we were sort of left to our own devices, right? And we didn't have smartphones, so we went outside and rode our bikes, but they have all these options, right? And the smartphones are the easy one. So the hard work is going to be trying to find alternative ways to get them to engage and to find activities that aren't just scrolling on your phone.
And again, if you take a look at this graph, and significant difference between boys and girls in regards to use of social media, as Vanessa just noted, as we discussed, and as I discussed personally, I see the comparison my daughter often does. And before smartphones, that was being done, but as noted, it opens up a whole new world and really amplifies everything. And the issue with social media now is you could actually change the way you look with many of these apps, which is a little scary. As we talked about, girls are more prone to social comparison, perfectionism. Girls' aggression is often relational, leading to intensified bullying online. They're more prone to share emotions and can spread mental health issues through social networks. And girls are more subject to predators and harassment, making them a lot more anxious. And then let's also look at the isolation as well. These numbers are worrisome. You're at about a 50% for isolation. So one of the bigger questions is, what role does emotional contagion play in mental health of girls on social media? I'll let you all read this, and then if you can, in the Q&A, just give us some examples of this in your own child's life, or even as an adult. I mean, you see it amongst adults as well, in your own personal life. We talk about, emotions being contagious, and the smartphone being an instrument to spread this. We'll give you about a minute just to think about incidences that you've been involved in, or you've seen your children involved in, with this negativity.
I think this is really interesting as a block of text, because I'm instantly comparing it to even how news cycles are often ran. So whenever you're looking at the news, looking for current events that are happening, it's usually, the crises that are happening everywhere, the really hard hitting stories that are really making headlines, but there's often really unsung heroes that are happening every day, and really great achievements, even within our own district, um, of students doing excellent things that aren't really as celebrated as much, until there's something negative going on. Then a whole lot of attention is on it. One of the commentary just added, the double-edged sword they are feeling from trying to connect through false means of social media and not having the get and lacking connection in person.
So I shared this with folks at our last meeting, and I send this to my daughter about 5 times a week. The idea that you'll not always be, and this is from Alice in Wonderland, you'll not always be loved, Alice. There will be days when others will be tired and bored with life, will have their heads in the clouds and will hurt you. There's this idea of self-love and creating self-love and being able to teach your child how to self-love, that is extremely important. One of the things I often do with my daughter are affirmations. As we noted in the last meeting, I believe in brain plasticity. I believe we can rewire. The work coming out of Carol Dweck and many others are proving that. And just as brains can be rewired negatively, they can be rewired positively. So affirmations is something I work on with my daughter. And I've seen some good progress. Vanessa, I see you shaking your head. And I mean, self-love is extremely important.
And the teenage years are a really great time for rewiring. So there seem to be two major times when the brain is like has especially big large amounts of plasticity, and that's 0 to 2, but it's also the teenage years. And some people are saying that there's this critical window early in life where babies have to learn certain things, but there's new speculation that that window opens up again in adolescence with puberty. So it's a really good time to sort of reteach them these things. And they are sort of the way that babies learn to attach to their moms and their dads when they're very, very young, and how that attachment sets the stage for some of their relationships later on. The teenage years is sort of a critical period for reestablishing those relationships with peers, right? So they have to relearn attachment with peers during that time, and they really, really want to be with their peers at that time. It's totally normal. As much as they drive us crazy because they don't want to hang out with us, it's totally normative for them to want to be with their peers. And it is a time where their brain is really, really sensitive to learning and to change.
And running through those scenarios in social interactive opportunities is very important. One of the conversations I have with my daughter, I always start off with, was everybody kind today? Right? That usually leads her to telling me a story of someone not being kind. And then we just run through a scenario of what to do in that situation. Maybe it wasn't her being treated badly. But if it was, how do you run through that scenario? What that idea of self-love and being an upstander and things of that nature, I try to prepare by running through various scenarios with her and role playing, so she's better adept at it. But if you think of self-love as a continuum, especially amongst teenagers or high school kids, right? There's that idea of just acceptance of yourself. There's that idea of liking yourself, and then there's that idea of loving yourself. And I know adults that aren't there yet. I'm still a work in progress in regards to trying to love myself. It's difficult, but it's work that has to be done on a daily basis, especially, as Vanessa noted, all the information on social media and what kids are seeing on a regular basis.
And I so appreciate this conversation, because as adults sometimes too, we often have to remember that, ourselves, we were once children. We were once their same age as our children, and we've seen a lot of life lessons. And I think important with all of the stuff to combat what they're seeing on social media is us actually being there to tell them that you're not going to have it all. You're not going to have it all together all the time. That these things are going to happen, but just to know that there's always a way to work through those things. Just having these conversations, because I do remember when I was an assistant principal at a middle school back in Mississippi, how every single day there was an issue that we were having to talk with either a student, a girl or a boy about, where they thought it was the end of the world. And it was not the end of the world. Everything was a big deal. And it's just like, having these conversations are very important to our young people, especially as we as adults can talk them through these things to just continue to motivate them, keep them up, keep them going, let them know that this world is full of ups and downs, but everything's gonna be okay, and just continue to motivate and keep them going, especially in the face of some of these things that they're seeing on social media. That picture that you showed of how you can doctor yourself up on the screen. A lot of this stuff our children are seeing on television and on these screens, they're all made up. They're all doing things that are making them look like something that they aren't. And so our role as adults, our role in the lives of our children to help counteract that is so vitally important. And so this conversation is definitely one that's important to have with the young people.
And thinking about the impact of those apps, the message being sent is you're not good enough as you are. That's the reality of it.
Oh, one of the commentary just added, I think this is also why the author recommends age 16 for social media. Not sure of stats, but I can imagine based on development, emotional contagion is worse for 13-year-olds. It also gives more time for parents to have influence over how their children are developing.
100%. We'll make a quick right turn to our boys currently and what impact smartphones, social media are having on our young men and boys. And I didn't put one of the data points on here, but if you look at our hospital rates for boys between the ages of 14 and 21, they're significantly higher than our girls at that age. They're seeing certain things happening on social media and are engaging in some of these risky behaviors that we're often seeing in the headlines. I think we've sent out, Dr. Gilbert, 2 or 3 memos this year so far about TikTok challenges. And it's, it's worrisome, especially amongst our boys. If you're looking even going deeper, nearly 3 and 4 have been exposed to pornography. The average age of first exposure is around 11 and a half years old in this country. Intentional consumption of pornography is more common amongst our boys at about 52%. And also, as we're looking at our LGBTQ plus teens, those rates are also growing at a higher rate. And we mentioned this previously. We talked about gaming. 85% of US teens say they play video games, and 4 in 10 do so daily. And not only teens, I can tell you that educators do see there's both positive and negative sides of video games. Positive being problem solving, making friends, taking risks. And the other side of that is also harassment, sleep loss, addiction, and things of that nature. Go ahead, Vanessa, sorry.
I know much less about porn and gaming. I know that it's obviously, it's covered in a chapter on this book about pornography and gaming. But I feel like I have much less to say. The video gaming issue is dealt with in a more prolonged way in that book Irresistible, because it's about addiction. But I think the two big issues with gaming that I've read about are, obviously violence, right? Because there's issues with boys becoming more aggressive because of playing these violent video games, and also the addiction issue.
Yep.
As a gamer myself on this call, I can just tell you as an adult, I can understand completely how our young people get so engrossed in that, and just the self work it takes on me as an adult to pace myself, to calm myself, to put this game down because I know I got to get up and get to work the next morning and things like that. But these are decisions I'm making as an adult. And so just wondering, what that's like for our young people and what they're having to deal with, and understanding that, putting the limits on the amount of gaming is so important and crucial, because I see just reflective of the work it takes for me as an adult in my gaming situations to make sure I keep it under wraps and keep it under control. And I'm 53 years old. So definitely this is something that we do want to continue to have conversations with our students who are gamers, but most importantly, our boys, as these numbers are turning out, and that we really got to do some work with them so that we can keep them monitored.
And Mr. Bing, I just wanted to toss in too. Um, I think it's interesting the availability of games that are out, because a parent could very well be involved in that gaming experience with their children. I know there are a ton of actually productive games, like there's farming simulators if somebody really wants to be big into agriculture. And over the years, I would say the past 2 decades, video games have definitely evolved, where there's round-based games now that are quick dopamine returns, where you're just starting a new round and you could just play one more match, rather than something that's taking more time and you have to be more conscientious about how much time you're actually devoting to it, maybe over studying or anything else of that nature. But I think the availability and the variety of games that are out should always just be thoughtful, or thought about from parents, because I know we're also developing esports where that's using video games in a kind of constructive environment, for our children to be successful in certain situations.
Yeah, I had to put this personal slide up here. I share anybody's pain who is a Roblox child. Sorry, this is the first thing I thought of. I had to put it in a slide. And then he ends, really talking about spirituality and religion, and the impact of social media on that as well. When you talk about, this data is religion important to my life? You're talking about 12th graders in our country. You're seeing a significant decline um, in religion, in spirituality being important in kids' lives, especially amongst our males. And that idea of spirituality and meaning in life, you're also seeing really clear data. And I've had many conversations with our students around the idea of, what's life is just seeming meaningless. What's the point? And you're seeing those numbers significantly rise, which for me is an opportunity for our education system to step in and really provide engagement, provide meaning, giving kids, uh, providing kids with opportunities that they can engage in. For us, that to me, it's as an educator, this is an opportunity for us to really make a difference in kids' lives. That is chapters 5 through 8, or part 3 of this book. We'll have one more book study to end our first South Orange Maplewood School District book study. We'll also ask for recommendations in their next session. We'll get that date out really soon. I'm going to open up the floor to final comments from our special guest, Vanessa, which we truly appreciate you taking part in this. And then also, if you want to put anything in the Q&A, I will be happy to share those with everybody on this call as well. But right now, I'll give the floor to Vanessa, then we'll pass it over to Dr. Gilbert.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the last session. I had my own book club with this book at Rutgers with members of the department, and similar conversations had here. I would say that the take home for me from this book is less about the screens themselves and more about how we have a big job ahead of us to re-engage children in play. Somebody just made a comment about having a half day for play. You know, play is decreasing for young kids, and social interactions are decreasing, and getting them to be in person. And you know what? COVID really, really messed with this, because we have all learned, for example, how to do this, how to meet remotely instead of together, in order to have discussions, and that's great. So it can be a really, really great tool. But the thing to remember is that when they're looking at a screen, they're not looking at their friends. They're not talking to you. And these are the experiences that teach them how, just like Jason said, teach them about emotions, teach them how to recognize other people's emotions, how to cope with other people's emotions, how to work out problems. These are the things that they are not learning from not being together. So I would say, you know, the other thing I want to say, the other thing is kids don't react well, as many of you guys said today in the chat, to things being taken away from them. So taking screens away, we have to do it, right? We have to put limits on it. But one thing to just think about this week between this session and the next is how to just divert their attention into other activities, other more social activities, without making it a, I'm taking this away from you, because that immediately gets protest, right? If they feel like they're being given something, like an opportunity to be with their friends, an opportunity, why don't you walk to 7-Eleven with your friends and get a Slurpee? You know, alternative options are things that my kids really go for. When I'm trying to take a screen away, instead of saying I'm going to take that away, I try to give them another option that's more fun and more social. And that's when they bite. When they don't bite is when I say I'm going to grab this from you. And you know, again, no judgment. I have to put limits on my kids too, and they hate it. But the thing that we all need to think about is how to divert their attention to the things that are better for them, the social interactions, the play dates, the things like that. So that's just something to think about, how we can create activities for them that don't involve screens, that are fun.
Yeah, but just taking away, I have the same issue. We're always looking for something to supplant or put in place of the technology. Oops. Go ahead, Dr. Gilbert.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great segue to what my thought on the day is going to be. A great session, session number 2. Looking forward to 3. And just to the point, I just think about my 6-year-old daughter, and I think about how I watched her over the weekend, over the Memorial Day weekend. We had the television off. I put my phone away, and she went from her Barbie dream house to her Bluey toys, just back and forth, just having a great adventure by herself. And I just thought to myself, is the lost art of imagination, the lost art of play, and how do we bring that back? into the joy of education. And I think this is a start. This is the start of really having these real conversations. And so thankful to see the comments about the screen time in classrooms, and Mr. Bing talking to you all about what we're working on. We had a meeting today with a transition meeting with our kindergarten teachers and our pre-K coaches, and it was about play and how do we bring more play back into kindergarten. And I think that's how we make a difference in this, is bring that imagination back, bring that social work back to what social world back where the kiddos are playing together. The thing my 6-year-old loves to do is go to one of the neighborhood parks, and we went there and we spent like 3 hours there, and she played with different kids and had a great time. And the question that I ask her when she gets back from school every day is, what did you play today? I don't ask her about what you learned today. I don't ask her about, so who did you play with today? And tell me. She goes into all of these world, and that's what this is about. That's what this is about. It's reclaiming the joy of youthfulness and the joy of being a child again. And I've even replaced my pictures on my cell phone of a picture when I was a child. So when people see my ringtone come up and they say, "Wow, look at you," that is just to be a reminder that we were all once children one day. And so this work is heart work, HEART, and I look forward to the third round as we continue to work for making our children's lives better as we go forward.
I'm going to ask folks not to use that phrase. This is heart work. It's copyrighted by Dr. Gilbert. So I'm going to ask you only to utilize that phrase with his permission. Shia, can you wrap this up for us?
Absolutely. We've had 3 questions that viewers just had a few ideas on before we go. So glad we mentioned Chromebooks in the classroom earlier. Curious to learn about how they're used and how much time students are spending on them. And if we're setting them up with good habits, could they be reading out loud or having discussions outside of the electronics? The next one, we keep games at the dinner table, cards, etc., make dinner at night as a family, and earn digital time by going outside to get more than 2 to 3 hours a day. Also have times off at night and limited during the day when they're off at school.
Yeah, I'm just discovering board games and card games we talk about replacement activities. Those are perfect.
Fantastic. And the next one asks for suggestions. Any ideas on how to set boundaries on phones with children when they are traveling between 2 households? The other household bought their student a phone and the rules are much different than the first household. I think that's really difficult, and probably our conversations amongst the adults involved and what some of those household rules are going to be for the use of that device for the student.
So think it's, you can even go deeper. Yeah, I'm divorced, so my daughter goes to her mom's, and we had to have adult conversations around usage of the smartphone. Those are tough conversations that we have to have. So, when you're sending your child or trusting your child to go over someone else's home, one of the first questions I've been asking or social media usage. I always ask that parent, what are the activities you have planned? So when I hear them, and it usually makes me a lot happy, and then it also makes me happy when I know I have certain apps that I can see your phone usage. But yeah, I think there's certain strategic questions that you have to be intentional about what you ask your friends and colleagues and parents of friends of your children.
Thank you. And the last says, thank you. This is a valuable conversation. I look forward to continuing this dialogue and supporting our students. We as parents also need to reclaim our role as parents and not abdicate to peers or phones.
Very true. Big thanks to everybody for joining us. I know your time is very valuable. Please look for our next date. We'll be sending that out within the next couple weeks. That'll wrap up this study of anxious generation with our third meeting, and then we'll also take some recommendations for books. We're looking to do 2 book studies next year, so we'll be looking to take some recommendations for those. So big thanks to Vanessa, big thanks to Dr. Gilbert and Ashaya. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night. This recording will be sent home through our emails and then also added to the district website header under SOMSD Connect. Thanks so much and have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.